thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. And special thanks to our partners at Atlantic Media. Once again, you have brought together the most inspiring people and minds, the greatest minds in this field. So thank you very much. And now my friend Aaron and I would like to introduce you to our new friend, my very special Aflac Duck.
Does everybody want to say hello? Good morning. So what we have here, this little guy is called My Special Aflac Duck, and we developed him over the past 12 months with about 100 children and 35 doctors at the Aflac Cancer Center. So everything that the duck does, everything that the duck was designed to do, was done because of something that we learned from a child or learned from their doctor as they were going through treatment. So the two main goals of the duck are to provide comfort and joy to children throughout their treatments. Some of the things that he does is we learned it was really difficult for kiddos to communicate their feelings to caregivers. He's really ticklish under the wings, so he keeps laughing. And so we developed this series of what we call feeling cards. So all these different faces, and when you tap them to the duck's chest, it expresses that emotion. So this is a way that children can communicate with their caregivers, with their doctors. That's a little bit less stressful than when a doctor asks you how you're feeling about getting chemo or getting a shot. You can ask how your duck is feeling. Kids can give chemotherapy to their ducks, which can be really comforting to kind of have this type of medical play. And one of the other things that we learned is just how noisy it is in a hospital. Oh, our duck is really sad this morning. Ah, that's better. And so there's all these different calming background sound environments. So like right now we're in a calming and tranquil garden that can be used in guided meditations and all sorts of ways to both drown out the background sounds, the beeping of the heart rate monitors, but also just provide a little bit of solace and calm in the hospital room. So there's a ton more that the duck does, and happy to share those details.
It really is remarkable, and my favorite is Silly, but I have mine on mute, so I don't know if he'll act out quite the way yours is acting out now. But I loved the whole theory behind giving the child their power back and allowing them to treat their duck as they would, because the feeling card stemmed from a medical need of child life specialists to be able to communicate, how is your duck feeling today? If a child can't necessarily communicate how they're feeling, but being able to actually administer the same treatment, and during that treatment, the duck does some very special things. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the biggest insights that we had as we did this research with families was exactly what Catherine said, that children lose so much control throughout their chemotherapy process that they gravitate towards play where they're in control. So the most requested toy at the Aflac Cancer Center was surprising to us. It was Legos for boys and girls, because you get to build your world. And that insight was so powerful that it guided pretty much every feature the duck has. You can control its feelings. You can control exactly when it gets chemotherapy. So this is the duck responding to its port being attached. And in this mode, it has a really comforting heartbeat. It starts out fast and goes much slower down to a really, really relaxed heart rate. And kids can also do kind of physical medical play. So this is where you can, thank you, take just the same medical tools that are being used on you and use those same tools on your duck friend. So again, this puts kids in that feeling of kind of having some control, being able to mentally prepare for what's right about to happen to them, and just have a friend that's going through all of this treatment with them, which can be so, so powerful.
And it's so adorable, and it has sensors, right? You mentioned it's ticklish, but you can actually have it nuzzle if you touch its cheeks and under the wings. Why don't you talk a little bit about the technology behind it?
Absolutely. So one of the things that was really important is creating something that's responsive for kids. This isn't going to replace something like a therapy animal, but unfortunately these kids can't have access to those tools all the time. So we designed the duck to be really aware of its environment, and as Catherine alluded to, there's touch sensors in its cheeks, which is where it's really affectionate. under its wings where it's ticklish and down its back where it gets soothed. And then there's also other considerations that we had to make. Like, for example, we know that kids get very light sensitive after chemotherapy, and we didn't want the duck to be disruptive. Our baseline for this is it must do no harm, right? And then, of course, on top of that, it needs to do the things that we set out to accomplish. And so it's got a little photosensor in the back of its head. So if it's in a dark room, it's quieter, its lights are dimmer. So if a child is light sensitive or if they're asleep, the duck isn't waking them up and being a disruptive kind of creature in their environment. And kind of going along with some of those technical requirements, we also needed to design something that could be used in a hospital and could be sterilized and cleaned. So we actually designed the first robot with a removable fur so that this can be taken off and thrown right in the washing machine so that parents whose children are using the toy, it's really simple and easy to use this over a long period of time.
And there was a special request from the parents, right? That there be a mute button. So the duck can act out quietly, which is really important. But we're in testing now. Why don't you talk a little bit about what we expect to see going forward?
Absolutely. So right now we're entering into a clinical study at the Aflac Cancer Center. We're in recruitment now. That'll run over the summer, and we're looking at child and parent distress. Because that's, anecdotally, when we test with kids, we've used the duck before children's port accesses. We've used it to facilitate conversations with families. And overwhelming feedback has been positive in seeing children kind of their faces light up in these really stressful situations just because of things like that, right? Because the duck interjects these little moments that allow for a smile or a chuckle in a time that's really stressful. So that's going to be running over the summer. And then starting in September, we're starting to distribute these to families. And we're so honored that Aflac has made the commitment to donate one to every child newly diagnosed with cancer in the US. And so I'm actually flying out in 2 days to go to our factory and be there to help make the first 1,000 ducks, load them onto the truck and bring them home. And we are just so overjoyed at the stories we'll get in, the smiles, the impact once they start going out in September.
Well, we're delighted to be a part of it, too. There's also an augmented reality piece of this. Why don't you talk a little bit about that with the iPad and the iPhone?
Absolutely. Yeah, so one of the pieces of the duck that isn't here as part of its backpack to demonstrate is an app. So we created an entire virtual world for children. Part of this is because we want the duck to be applicable across a pretty broad age range. 3 to 13 is where it's recommended. And we see a lot of kids in the older end of that age range really engaging with tablet and phone technology. And so using the duck's virtual world, you could feed the duck, you could bathe the duck, which we know are both very stressful, can be stressful things for families. And for example, a lot of kids get nauseous or anticipatory nausea. And what's encouraged is to make mealtime fun. So you can fling foods at the duck and it catches it in its mouth. You could bathe the duck. I guess a lot of these kids are getting sponge baths. So you suds the duck up with soap. It has a hair dryer. It sings when it's in the shower. And then you can also go and do fun things like you heard those sounds it was making earlier. We call those soundscapes. The reason that this is a spaceship is because in the app you actually blast off to planets. And children can, again, tapping into that insight of control, they get to control exactly how those planets sound. And they get to build their happy places. So when you kind of dive into the garden world, you get to decide, am I hearing chimes? Am I hearing streams? Am I hearing, the whistling of leaves? Whatever it might be. And so that provides just like a whole other opportunity for kids to engage. And the augmented reality component is really fun because you could be looking through your phone and doing things like sudsing your duck up, and your duck is moving and interacting with the app as that's all happening.
That's incredible. And it will sing back to you.
Oh, yeah, so it absolutely will. If I just grab this silly card, and I might have muted my duck. I did. Haha. So this is its silly mode. So of course there's many serious things that the duck has to do, but being silly is something that every child that we've tested with, it's really playtime. So in this mode you can sing to your duck. Sings back to you. You can also have like little converse. That's called quack boxing. It's a language we invented. You'll notice the duck doesn't speak English, and that's actually intentional. It's really powerful because the duck quacks. It allows children to project feelings and emotions onto their ducks. And so when a child life specialist asks the child, what do you think the duck is saying right now when it's mad? The kid can say, I think the duck really doesn't want to be here right now. Or I think the duck is mad because it doesn't like getting its port accessed. So it sounds kind of silly when you hear the duck maybe singing and doing all of these various quacks, to which there's something like 350 of in the duck. But this type of quacking language is actually really empowering for kids giving a voice to the duck.
Well, thank you, Aaron. Unfortunately, our time is up. I can share that I have been with Aflac for 4.5 years, and I had gotten used to being upstaged by the live duck. But now I have never felt more upstaged in my life, and couldn't be for a better cause. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much.